I'm recording my experience with the Explore Inspection Management for Public Sector Trail as a way to learn how to do dynamic assessments for nonprofits. Prior video in the playlist was about stages around setting up. Now we're moving to set up questions and regulatory codes. And again, I thought this would be fairly quick, but there's a little more to it. In setting up questions, the first step is to create question categories. So when you assign questions, you actually have a category you can work with. I found these categories interesting because I didn't remember seeing them in the inspections module that we just did, looking at assessment indicator definitions, the items, and then grouping those into assessment tasks. So taking a quick look at the assessment indicator definition, the object manager, it really just has 4 fields. Indicator type, but not a category. Taking a look at assessment task definition, here we have 4 fields with the addition of the owner name, but no categories. So when we look at assessment question fields in the object manager, we do find a category. And we're able to add the new category pick list values of fire safety, building standards, and child safety as the trailhead is requesting. But I found it interesting that there are 15 items, which gives assessment question a lot more potential features than when we were working with assessment indicator definitions for inspections, or even the groupings looking at assessment task definitions. Looking at the assessment indicator definition, we do have an indicator field type, but opening field type, there's no information because it's a standard field. We can take a look at the list view, look at new, and we can see that we have numbers, Boolean, percentage, date, time, text, pick list, and multi-select pick list. I'll show you what we found when we looked at the assessment questions, but the one that was missing is, for assessment questions, is percentage. So taking a look at an assessment question, if we look at what are the data types here, same challenge, we don't see the pick list values. But taking a look at all assessments from a list view, we can click New. This is where we can see the categories, which is required, and also data type. Having compared the two, it's interesting to look at the slightly different definitions. So there's a checkbox, there's a Boolean for the assessment indicator definition. Doesn't have currency, but it does show up in the new assessment. This is dynamic assessments. It has a date time, but not just date. No disclosure, no edit block, no email, no file formula. There is a multi-select in both. What they call an integer here. They have the option of a number and a decimal field. Radio group select, which is pick list. Telephone, text, these are all new. Time, again, is separated. And URL. So I find it interesting that we have many more choices within a dynamic assessment than we do within the legacy assessment indicator definition fields. Looking back at the trailhead instructions, it talks about creating questions. And what it shows here is that we can enter response values, yes or no. There's a checkbox. So we could enter response values on separate lines. And we can see here that response values is required when the assessment question is radio. You can see the selections there. We can also define response values later as option source in the Omni Studio Designer. So we'll learn more about that in a future video. Recall that in the inspection, we had a separate object for capturing pick list values. With dynamic assessments, it's part of the question. And the last step is to associate questions with regulatory codes, which we did in the prior inspection version as well. Note that the link is through the assessment question version, and we need to add related tab to assessment question version. So looking at the ERD, it's interesting again that assessment question has a child object which is version, and the version is what links regulatory codes. But that gets us started. So now let's talk about how to engage Discovery Framework.